About 10 years into the motion picture industry, producers began traveling west, and would all just collectively decide to set up shop in a small town in South California. Why is that? Hello, my name is David of Film is History, and today I'm discussing the introduction of cinema in the United States, beginning with the invention of the film camera, up until the first emergence of the studio system around the 1910s. Along the way there will be stories of faked death, a mysterious disappearance, imps, pirates, and the formation of Hollywood. The film camera, as it is known today, was properly refined from 1878 to 1894. English photography pioneer Edward Muybridge set up 12 cameras in a line to photograph a horse in motion. The result was The Horse in Motion, a collection of still images which, when played in a sequence, gives the illusion of the horse running. In 1884, the process of capturing these images was revolutionized when George Eastman invented film in a roll, originally a roll of paper, and later the more familiar celluloid. The name Eastman gave to the first still camera to use celluloid film in 1888 was Kodak. This coincided with another 1888 invention from Louis Le Prince, a type of camera able to capture a sequence of images through a single lens, with which Le Prince shot what is widely considered the earliest moving image. These two inventions would be combined to create film cameras, the earliest of which were patented by the likes of Wordsworth Dorranceforth, the Lumiere brothers, and the overarching villain of this story, Thomas Edison. The first technology developed to present films came from Edison, who, in 1893, patented the kinetoscope, a peep show exhibition machine. What peep show means is that the audience would look through a hole at the top of the device at the film reel rapidly passing by, sometimes isolated on a piece of glass or through a small gap. Edison's invention was ostensibly a compass inversion of a zoetrope or zoopraxistrope, which is what Muybridge used to display his moving images 20 years prior. Besides sheer age, there were just a number of problems with the peep show method of film exhibition, from eye strain, to the high cost of operation, to the isolation of such a viewing experience. Issues all remedied when the Lumiere brothers introduced the first film projector in 1895. Film projection changed motion photography entirely. Now film took on a similar form as theatre, and we see this with early films adapting theatre narratives, adopting live musical accompaniment, and casting major theatre stars. But before getting on to all of that, the reason I went into such depth about the development of motion photography was to illustrate how innovation of film technology was fragmented across the globe. This was at a time of emerging globalization, so sharing information was more common, but slow, so often inventors were effectively making strides independently. This is compounded by the separation of national legal systems, which meant that a patent acquired in France didn't necessarily carry weight in the United States. This is all to say that there was ambiguity about who actually owned film technology, and a lot of taking credit for other people's inventions. And taking credit for other people's hard work is Edison's favourite pastime, so it should come as no surprise that he took advantage of this ambiguous time and swiped as many patents as possible. However, allegedly, his patent hoarding was taken to an unprecedented extreme when it came to film technology. In 1890, in the United Kingdom, the aforementioned Louis Le Prince was set to patent a single-lens film projector, an invention many years before its time, after which he was scheduled to showcase the technology in New York, which would have undoubtedly led to his securing of the patent in the United States. And then, miraculously, with a family at home and a business showing no signs of financial trouble, Le Prince just disappeared. As he had the most elusive Le Prince were granted the patents, Edison is perceived as the culprit. A suspicion he didn't do any favours when Louis' son, Adolphe Le Prince, was killed under suspicious circumstances while out duck hunting. This is after the unassuming Adolphe had made an enemy of Thomas Edison, when he spoke out against him in defence of his father in court. This is all conjecture, of course. We'll never know the true fate of Louis Le Prince. However, Edison's involvement in the disappearance is founded on some truth, his ruthless desire to ensure total control over the US film industry. While there were no strides in technology, the period from 1895 to 1905 saw a major shift in what film meant. no longer was it merely a technical novelty, but rather it had become a legitimate form of entertainment. This can in large part be credited to storytelling and production in film becoming more sophisticated, due to the likes of Edwin S. Porter, George Méliès, James Williamson, and Cecil Hepworth, to name just a few. Whereas films of the 19th century were primarily on-location actualities, or straightforward theatre adaptations, filmmakers of the early 20th century developed cinema as a medium capable of unique storytelling, due to the introduction of more advanced continuity editing, such as parallel montage, an understanding of ellipses as a passage of time, and magic jump cuts. Capitalizing on the rapid legitimacy of film as mass entertainment, from 1905 to 1907, there was a boom of Nickelodeon theatres in the United States. So named after the cheap nickel-priced admission, these theatres were typified by cramped seating in abandoned high street shops. With the boom in spectatorship, obviously there would arise a boom in demand, and that is where many of the cultures of film production would take form. As a means of keeping production consistent and efficient, early film production companies would begin hiring the same cast and crew to work on multiple films. From this, notions of directorial authorship and film stardom would be introduced. In 1908, Thomas Edison would spearhead the production and distribution collective the Motion Picture Patents Company. From the 19th century until 1905, the Edison Film Production Company was the clear industry leader, and as a result, Edison didn't necessarily need to flex his patent ownership muscles to keep the rest of the industry at bay. This had suddenly changed with the Nickelodeon boom, which saw the emergence of major competitors like S&A, Laemmle, Biograph, and Vitagraph, as well as the existing dominance of foreign imports from Pathé and the Lumières. Edison needed a means of regulating the industry. The MPPC was an agreement amongst the biggest companies to follow specific guidelines set forth by Thomas Edison. A significant collaborator with the group was the aforementioned George Eastman, whose Eastman Kodak company owned the patent for film stock, an essential mechanism of the film camera. Likewise, Edison owned the patent for film projection, the only means by which films were publicly showcased. In a very obvious way, the MPPC owned a monopoly on film production and exhibition technology, meaning anyone who wanted to be involved in the industry in any way had to agree to the MPPC's terms. While Edison didn't fiscally own his competition, everyone else in the industry were forced to follow his rules. The MPPC were by and large a negative force in the industry, as it prevented smaller companies from prospering during the crucial formative years of cinema. However, it fostered a positive domestic emphasis. The Nickelodeon boom saw an increase in theatres, and while companies formed to meet the demand in production, the films screened in America were overwhelmingly from overseas. The authoritarian protectionist measures implemented by Edison may have squashed all unwanted competition, but at least had the beneficial repercussion of preventing the industry from becoming overrun by foreign imports. There was just one major problem with Edison's patents, and that was the area of jurisdiction. Something important to remember, and it may be impossible to envision as coinciding with the film industry, but the Wild West was still in full effect at this time. The California gold rush had only just occurred 50 years prior. Famous outlaw Billy the Kid was alive within the past 25 years. Maps at the time still prominently made reference to the Oregon Trail. Obviously this is not an authentic historical document, but Red Dead Redemption was set in 1911. Keep that in mind. Keep visions of John Marston in your mind as I go forward with this story. At the time of the MPPC being formed, the motion picture industry was based along the East Coast, primarily in New Jersey, with major production companies in Fort Lee, and Edison located in West Orange. As a result, California became a prime location for pirate companies to operate outside of the reasonable jurisdiction of Edison's patents. The boom of the industry provided the financing for smaller companies to relocate. The varied landscape and prevalent sunlight meant that California offered ample opportunities to film outside. The large, undeveloped land available meant that setting up production companies was significantly cheaper than in New Jersey. And most importantly, how Southern California was meant that if Edison did go through the effort of sending patent enforcers, filmmakers could quickly flee to Mexico in the time it took said enforcers to travel west. This is why Hollywood began, as a means of subverting the reach of Thomas Edison's patents. And during this time, another major shift in the industry would also damage the MPPC. Amongst numerous other regulations, the MPPC disallowed the crediting of actors. Today, a major blockbuster couldn't be produced without a big name attached. The film star is such an integral and iconic trait of Hollywood cinema that it's hard to envision a time when film stardom was effectively banned. Though it's important to keep in mind that cinema was still a fledgling and expensive industry at the time, and any unneeded expense could have made the whole venture not profitable. At the time, theatre actors were the celebrities, thus demanded exorbitant wages to appear in a production. As a response to this, Edison made it a necessary stipulation to join the MPPC that companies did not credit actors. Without their name on display, the leads of early films were unable to garner a following from the audience, and therefore were not able to demand more money for their acting roles, the basic supply and demand of film stardom. In hindsight, we know this method wasn't wholly effective. There were magazines like Moving Picture World, and still existing publications like Variety and Billboard, which would discuss reoccurring actors. Historians Janet Stager and Roberta Pearson observed an increase in the usage of close-ups as a means of showing off film stars as early as the Nickelodeon Boom. And maybe the most famous example that demonstrates that the censorship of names didn't work is the cult following of the Biograph girl. So named due to her repeated appearance in Biograph productions, in 1910 the Biograph girl was perhaps the biggest figure in film, and, despite her lack of a name, was a major box office draw. The censoring of actors' names as a means of keeping pay down would swiftly prove to be the MPPC's undoing, as Carl Laemmle could easily lure the Biograph girl to his company, the Independent Motion Picture Corporation, by way of simply offering her more money. The MPPC were obviously threatened by Laemmle's potential to undermine their business and steal their biggest star, and when suing him over 300 times didn't deter him, a last-ditch effort by Edison's trust was to publish an article ran in film magazines stating that the Biograph girl had died in a car accident. As a retort, Laemmle bought a half-page ad in Motion Picture World, refuting these claims and calling the MPPC cowards and liars, revealing the Biograph girl's name as Miss Lawrence, and advertising her upcoming films with the Independent Motion Picture Corporation. This advertising currently on your screen is bar none the single most important publicity stunt ever orchestrated in Hollywood, because it instantly changed how films were produced and marketed, setting in motion the type of culture where, today, no film can be produced without a big name attached. Florence Lawrence would go on to have perhaps the greatest career of the 1910s. A whole industry of tabloids emerged discussing the private lives of film stars. The MPPC would have to relax their policy on censoring actors' names, and would eventually cease operation in 1915. The greater profitability of the industry due to the emergence of film stars, coupled with the democratization of the industry with the end of Edison's monopoly, led to the origin of the studio system. This is where I think I'll end this episode on the origin of Hollywood. Just to rewind for a second, the reason Carl Laemmle was sued 300 times is because he served as the de facto leader of the pirate independent filmmakers. Because he was kind of an acting leader for the independents, and because a large conglomerate would deter Edison's lawsuits, Laemmle struck a deal with his competition to work together. The name that collective adopted was Universal Pictures, the first of the big five companies which would go on to dominate the studio system. The emergence of the studio system is comprised of many comparable stories, which would make this video far too long, so I'm cutting it off here. If there's any particular film history topic you want me to make a video on, please feel free to comment down below. I hope you learned something from this video. See ya.